In this episode, you'll discover why rigid rowers miss water, the causes and cures of rigidity in your body, and the amazing catch timing which is waiting for you when you fix this.
Feel the grip of the oar handle, smooth yet firm in your hands. Taste the salt of your own sweat and the occasional splash of water. It's all part of the journey. Welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Each week, our host, Masters Rowing Coach Rebecca Caro, dives deep into the world of Masters Rowing. Whether you're on the water or in the gym, join us to become a faster master. Let's go rowing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode where today we're diving into something that I learned from the amazing Canadian coach, Al Morrow. Now, Al has presented several webinars for Faster Masters Rowing. If you're interested, go and browse the website. But he made a really interesting remark when he was talking about good rowing is horizontal. And it is around the issue that rigidity is the thing that absolutely kills how you approach the catch. What did he mean by this? He basically said that, and I quote, "The more rigid you are, the lower the probability you will have a good catch." That was what he said. And rigidity or tension or tightness are all things that are all part of the rowing stroke. And you probably remember being a beginner and feeling that you really needed to hold onto the handles really tight because you weren't sure what was going to be happening. And as masters, we want to feel often in control of our own destiny. And so being sure that you're holding on is a good way to start, you think. But of course, actually, that's counterintuitive. Rigidity is a real problem in rowing because we need to find a balance between having control of our oars, having control of our bodies, and yet not being so tight that the tightness means that you actually then do not have good control. The more tight you are, the less likely you are to be able to make a movement in the rowing stroke with control and with accuracy. Easy way for you to test this. If you're a sweep rower, imagine you're holding your handle, and whichever is your inside hand, hold it tighter than you would normally. And you might even want to sort of semi-let go with your outside hand. Sometimes people, extend their fingers on the oar handle and let their thumb drop down so it's not actually holding the handle. And when you're rowing, try and take a catch with your inside hand. And what you'll find is that your timing is off and that you are less accurate. One of the reasons for this in sweep is because your inside hand is closer to the fulcrum and you have a smaller height to lift to put the oar in the water. And therefore, it's much harder to judge exactly where the correct depth is. When you use the hand on the end of the handle, it's a little easier. You can try exactly the same thing in sculling. Try holding on really tight and then trying to feather or square. And you'll find that the movement is more clunky and you often end up with your wrist bent either high or low, sort of cocked or bent, and that your hand is then in the wrong position on the grip. So that's just to prove to yourself what happens to your rowing when you have increased tension. Al's insight, though, is really about the catch. And the thing about rigidity is it's a balance between poise, which I believe is the right amount of control, which does include tension and holding on. And sometimes it includes pressure as well. So you might be pushing down on your handle in the recovery, for example, to keep your oars above the water. Poise is also your body position. You don't want to sit slumped like as my old coach used to say, like a sack of potatoes. You do want to sit erect and with the correct body posture. So ideally, you want to be able to rock forwards with your shoulders forward of your hips with a reasonably straight spine, for example. Those things, if you lose that poise and you lose the way your body is positioned, you can tension. You can over tension and under tension your body, but you need to have enough tension to get into the right positions, but not so much that you are rigid and then failing to take advantage of the opportunity that your body has in terms of strength and movement and control. So rigidity is a thing that kills your strength. It's very hard to be really strong if you're holding on too tight, if you are too tense. And remember that in rowing, 90% of your strength is below your armpits. Your arms, shoulders, neck have very little to contribute in terms of raw power to the rowing stroke. And when you're rigid, you can't adjust in real time. You find it hard to respond to a gust of wind or a wave or a slightly unbalanced stroke. When you are less rigid and you can move fluidly with the boat moving under you, what you'll find is that your boat will ride straight over waves. It will go straight through gusts of wind without losing the set or the balance, and that the boat absorbs the energy from the water where the waves are trying to disrupt you. But if you're rigid and you hold something stiff and hit it, it tends to react. Whereas if it's soft, and you can see if you're watching the video, my fingers are now sort of gently curved instead of being absolutely straight, it will absorb the impact of a small gust of wind and won't cause you to move and lose your timing in your stroke. So what was Al Morrow's drill? Well, his drill was a catch drill, and it's a really interesting one. You start by doing it with your boat stationary, and if you're in a crew boat, let someone else sit the boat for you. And what you're going to try and do is put the oar in the water so that it goes in reasonably fast and it arrives at the perfect depth underneath the water's surface. Here's how you go. You sit in the catch position, push down on your handles so that the oar or spoons go high above the water. And then you literally let go of the handle so the handles then will rise up, because obviously the fulcrum is such that you've got more mass on the outboard. And I want you to listen to the sound that the oar makes when it goes into the water. And the sound it makes is an oar arriving under zero tension, because you're not actually holding on to the handle. And if you watch it while you're doing this, you will notice that it goes to the perfect depth. Now, if you're a single sculler, you might want to do this with just one oar, obviously. Leave one flat on the water and a little bit of pressure laterally on that to control the balance of the boat, and use the other oar. Now, one of my old coaches used to call this the plopping drill or fluffing, and practicing how to unweight the handle efficiently and let that oar drop under its own weight and listening to the sound is the first part of Al Morrow's drill. The perfect depth happens when you're super relaxed, because you're not interrupting gravity. You're not getting in the way of the movement of the oar handle rising up and the spoon going down. And you need to try and then progress this drill. So first try it with the handle completely unweighted, as in you are not holding on to it. Then try it with your hands still staying on the handle, but you're just going to unweight them without any tension. You might find it easier to have your fingers extended so you're not actually gripping. So you literally just have your hands flat on the top of the handle and you unweight them by lifting your hands up and try and make the same sound of the oar dropping into the water, and then move to holding it with what you would think of as a normal grip. When you've done some really good ones, just stationary at the catch, and you're hearing that good sort of plop sound of the oar going into the water, just take a stroke, one stroke, and then stop, check the boat, stop it dead, try it again. And what you want to then do is to move towards being able to make that perfect catch sound in one stroke, but starting at the finish. So start at the finish with your blades out of the water and feathered, or actually it might be easier to do it squared when you're first learning, particularly if someone else is sitting the boat for you. Roll all the way up the slide using the correct sequence. Be very disciplined, hands, body, release the knees, roll up. And as you're approaching the front end, get ready to unweight the handle, make the plop, take one stroke, stop. What you're listening for is obviously the sound of the oar entering the water. And at this stage, you're trying to build your skill with timing when you unweight the hands, with when your slide has that moment of stopping as it changes direction. So you have to unweight your hands before the change of direction, which of course you realize. As you build up, obviously one stroke, you can then go on to continuous rowing. Keep listening, then try and do it with 2 or more of you in the crew doing the same thing at the same time. Now, the thing that makes your catches progress beyond this, so this is teaching you how to remove rigidity from and tension from your neck, shoulders, arms, and hands at the catch. Once you've learned how to row without that tension, moving on to having a more accurate catch is a slightly different drill, because you cannot get the best possible catch, particularly at higher rates of maybe 24 strokes a minute and above. You cannot get that without being proactive in placing the oar to make the catch. And of course, that proactivity can negate the relaxation and lack of rigidity that you have been trying to cultivate. So you may not want to worry too much about that until you've really embedded this in your own rowing. The key is to trust the release of tension. Trust that you won't flip. Trust that the oar won't dive, catch a crab, whatever, when you unweight the handles. And the thing to work on is moving your moment of release of tension earlier in the recovery. If you've ever watched beginners learning to row, what they tend to do is slide all the way to front stops, wait, and then lift their hands to put the oar in the water. Now, you're much more experienced than that. You know that you have to get the oar already under the water before you change direction on your seat. And so timing the release of tension is the next step that you need to be working on. But throughout all of this, trust and listen to that sound of the blade entering the water and making that correct depth based on you getting rid of your rigidity. Now, I look forward to hearing how this goes with you. It isn't easy, but it will reward you. Removing tension from your stroke is something that everybody can do, and even experienced rowers may find that relearning this, readdressing it, still brings benefit to your rowing. Now, do join our newsletter. I look forward to seeing you next week.
We are part of the RowingChat podcast network. Please tell your fellow rowers about the show. If you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.